How did ancient humans deal with body hair? What if I told you that the oldest grooming tool ever discovered isn't a razor or a razor blade? It's something way stranger. Archaeologists found it buried for over 100,000 years, and it completely changes how we understand ancient human vanity. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Your ancestors didn't just remove body hair because they were vain. They did it for survival. And the methods they used? Some of them are absolutely brutal. Let's start at the very beginning. About 1.6 million years ago, early humans went through something called the aquatic ape hypothesis. Don't worry, humans didn't actually become aquatic. But during this period, our ancestors started losing body hair at an unprecedented rate. We went from being covered head to toe in thick hair like our primate relatives to becoming the relatively hairless creatures we are today. But why? The leading theory is thermoregulation. As our brains got bigger, they needed more cooling. Hair is basically an insulator. It keeps heat in. So as humans became more active hunters covering longer distances, that extra body hair became a problem. We needed to cool down. Those who had less body hair survived better in hot climates and passed on their genes. Evolution did the work for us. But then something unexpected happened. Even after we had naturally less body hair, we started deliberately removing what was left. Fast forward to around 100,000 years ago, and this is where it gets interesting. Archaeologists discovered the oldest evidence of intentional hair removal in southern Africa. We're talking about shells and rocks that were deliberately shaped into scraping tools. What were they scraping? Hair, possibly from their own bodies or from animal hides they were processing. But here's the key detail. They weren't just doing this randomly. The wear patterns on these tools show they were used regularly and methodically. This wasn't accidental. This was a grooming ritual. But we need to understand something crucial about early human society. These weren't just beauty treatments. Hair removal served multiple purposes, and some of them were matters of life and death. Let's talk about parasites. This is the part that makes you itch. Body hair is a parasite's penthouse suite. Lice, fleas, ticks, they love body hair. They lay eggs in it, they hide in it, and they use it to spread disease. In a time before antibiotics, a serious lice or flea infestation could lead to infection and death. So removing body hair wasn't vanity, it was basic hygiene, it was survival. Ancient Egyptians understood this better than almost any civilization. By around 3000 BCE, hair removal in Egypt was a full cultural practice. But here's what's wild. They didn't just remove body hair for men and women. Egyptians of both sexes removed all body hair, including eyebrows, and they had a specific reason. Hair was considered unclean. It was associated with chaos and wildness. Being smooth-skinned and hairless meant you were civilized, refined, and clean. Cleopatra supposedly had all her body hair removed as a standard beauty practice. But again, it wasn't just beauty, it was also practical. The methods they used were surprisingly sophisticated. They developed something called sugaring, which is basically ancient waxing. They mixed sugar, water, and lemon juice into a paste, applied it to the skin, and ripped it off. Sound familiar? We still use this method today. They also used depilatory creams made from plant oils and bat's blood. Yes, bat's blood. We don't recommend trying that at home. But Egyptians weren't the only ones figuring this out. Around the same time, Middle Eastern cultures were developing their own hair removal techniques. Arab and Persian women used threading, twisting thread to pull out hair one line at a time. This is still used today in many parts of the world. The precision of threading suggests that people weren't just trying to remove hair for hygiene. They were developing aesthetics. They were shaping eyebrows, creating specific looks. In ancient Rome, hair removal became even more extreme. Roman women considered body hair absolutely barbaric. They weren't just removing it, they were going to extremes we can barely imagine today. They used pumice stones to scrape the skin raw. They applied caustic substances that basically burned the hair off. Some used early forms of threading, but the most disturbing method, they used a substance called quicklime mixed with cat poop. Yes, cat poop. The caustic reaction would literally burn away the hair. The stench must have been incredible. Roman men were no different. They removed body hair too. which was actually unusual for men at the time compared to other cultures. Roman culture was obsessed with the smooth, hairless ideal. Failure to remove body hair was seen as uncivilized, foreign, and barbaric. A hairy man was basically seen as not Roman enough. But here's where it gets interesting. While Romans were destroying their skin with quicklime, other cultures were approaching body hair removal completely differently. In ancient India, hair removal was ritualistic. Hindu practices included threading and sugaring, but it was also spiritual. Hair removal was connected to cleansing rituals before prayer and meditation. It wasn't just about looking good, it was about spiritual purity. This connection between body hair and spiritual cleanliness shows up across multiple ancient cultures. The idea wasn't just cosmetic, it was deep and connected to how people understood their bodies and their place in society. Native Americans had a fascinating approach. Many tribes didn't remove body hair extensively because it served protective purposes in their climate. But when they did remove it, usually for ceremonies or to prevent parasite issues, they used flame. They would carefully singe hair off using controlled fire. It was dangerous, it was painful, and it could easily go wrong. But it worked. The hair removal happened quickly and effectively. Chinese culture presents another interesting angle. While some body hair removal existed, it wasn't as extreme as in Rome or Egypt. Instead, the focus was on facial hair, particularly mustaches and beards. These were signs of status and masculinity. So while Western and Middle Eastern cultures were obsessed with removing all body hair, Eastern cultures were sometimes focused on cultivating and maintaining specific types of facial hair. The philosophy was different. Hair wasn't inherently unclean. Certain types of hair just signaled certain things. But let's come back to the bigger picture, because there's something important we're missing. All of these ancient civilizations, working independently, came to similar conclusions about hair removal. Egyptian, Roman, Indian, Persian, and Arab cultures all developed hair removal practices. Some shared methods, like sugaring, but most invented their own techniques. Why? The answer is probably both simple and complex. Simple because parasites and hygiene are universal problems. Complex because beauty standards are cultural and they vary wildly. But what's fascinating is that despite having no contact with each other, multiple ancient civilizations decided that removing body hair was a marker of civilization and cleanliness. That's telling us something deep about human psychology. We didn't just remove hair because it was practical. We did it because we wanted to signal something about ourselves. We wanted to say, I am clean, I am civilized, I am refined. Hair removal became a status symbol. Fast forward through the Middle Ages, where, interestingly, hair removal kind of went out of style in Europe, and women actually started plucking their foreheads to make them look larger because that was supposedly beautiful. And we get to the modern era. The methods got increasingly sophisticated. In 1844, a French inventor created the first depilatory cream that was actually safe. By the early 1900s, razors were being mass-produced. The beauty industry took off, and suddenly hair removal went from being a practical necessity to being big business. Advertising campaigns in the 1920s literally invented the concept that underarm hair was ugly and unclean. Before that, it wasn't really a thing. The advertising industry created the need, and people bought the solution. But here's the plot twist. Modern science has proven that many of our ancestors were onto something real. Studies have shown that removing body hair does reduce the presence of certain bacteria that cause odor and infection. Hair removal is genuinely more hygienic in some ways, but it's also less protective. Body hair does provide some insulation and protection, so our ancient ancestors were dealing with a genuine trade-off. They were choosing cleanliness and appearance over protection and warmth. Today, body hair removal is still deeply cultural. Some cultures embrace body hair, some don't. Some remove everything, some remove nothing, and increasingly, people are questioning why we remove body hair at all. The modern body positivity movement asks a question our ancestors never really asked. Why are we doing this? Is it truly necessary or just conditioned? The answer, if we look at history, is probably both. It started as practical necessity, it evolved into cultural beauty standards, and now it's become a choice, one that varies from person to person and from culture to culture. So the next time someone asks you why humans remove body hair, You've got a 1.6 million year history to pull from. It's not just about vanity, it's about survival, it's about cleanliness, it's about signaling status, and it's about deeply ingrained cultural beliefs about what it means to be civilized and refined. Our ancestors figured out how to remove body hair with bat's blood and quicklime because they genuinely believed it mattered. And maybe, in some ways, they were right.